To all you hardcore Zoro fans out there, brace yourself, because I'm pretty sure that our directionally challenged Mossad won't make it to the end of One Piece. I've been reading One Piece since 2001, and time again I've noticed that Zoro is surrounded by countless death flags. In this video I'm going to explain why I believe that the moment Zoro achieves his dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman, it'll also be the moment he meets his end, making way for the next contender to claim the title. I know, a lot of you can't imagine this, or you just don't want to hear it, but if one of the Straw Hats were to bite the dust, it's not going to be Usopp or Luffy, it's going to be Zoro. But let me break down why I've come to this conclusion. All the way back in chapter 3, we see the first hints that Zoro might meet his end by the conclusion of the manga. He's introduced to us tied to a cross like a martyr. As you all know, it was Enma who had him bound there because Zoro had killed his pet wolf, which had been running loose, attacking people and even going after a little girl named Rika. Later, Rika tries to help Zoro by making him some onigiri. We all know the story. Enma shows up, stomps on the rice balls and mocks Zoro and Rika. Luffy loses it, punches Enma and eventually frees Zoro. But here's the thing that we shouldn't overlook. Zoro wasn't just hanging on the cross like a martyr. He was acting like one too. He stood up for the weaker ones and accepted the punishment imposed on him, believing he could endure a whole month without food because of the promise he made to Kuina. The promise that he would become the world's strongest swordsman. This promise is like a religion to Zoro. Something sacred. And this is where it gets really interesting. Even though Zoro is a man of honor, who would normally stick to a deal like being tied up without food for a month, he still couldn't resist eating Rika's onigiri in the end. And he didn't eat them because he was starving, he ate them because he was grateful for what Rika had done for him out of kindness. He simply couldn't ignore that act of care. Zoro is, deep down, probably the biggest softie in the entire crew. And I'm going to show you even more examples to prove that. Because ultimately, in my opinion, this softness will lead to his downfall. And we will see in One Piece one of its most traumatic and heartbreaking moments ever. And there are countless other moments like this. Think about it, what happened back on Filler Bark? Zoro took on all of Luffy's pain and injuries, saying only that nothing happened. In chapter 485, Chopper even says that Zoro nearly lost his life. The two clowns from Lola's crew witnessed it all, and explained to Sanji what had happened. But when they tried to tell the others, Sanji held them back, saying that guy didn't do it because he wanted to be thanked. Sure, Robin found out too, but it's hard to hide anything from her anyway. Both Sanji and Robin saw that Zoro put his own dream on hold, just to make sure that Luffy can achieve his, and become Pirate King. And that's the crucial part of all of this. You see, Zoro originally wanted Kuina to be the greatest swordsman in the world. Sure, he was frustrated that he kept losing to her, but ultimately he looked up to her. She was his rival, and he was furious when he saw her doubting herself just because she was a girl. That's why he made her promise that one of them would become the world's greatest swordsman. But soon after, she died. An event like that leaves a mark on someone. Especially giving promises will be something Zoro won't do so fast again. But I will show you what I mean later, so stay tuned. But why do you think Zoro sacrifices himself over and over for others, especially for Luffy, to make sure they can reach their dreams? It's simple. He never wants to experience the pain of seeing someone he cares about to fail to achieve their dream again. In my opinion, this matters to him more than his own dream. And we see this pattern surface time and time again. It's so obvious. Bro even took Big Mom in Kaido's attack head on just to give Luffy and the others a chance to fight. We all witnessed Zoro swallowing his pride and asking Mihawk to train him, even though Mihawk is ultimately his final rival, his goal. Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman, the man Zoro wants to defeat, is the very person he asked for training, right after seeing in the newspaper that Luffy was safe. After everything they went through on Sabaody, Zoro realized he had to become stronger to support his captain in achieving his dream of becoming Pirate King. Even Mihawk, usually so serious and stern, couldn't help but laugh realizing that Zoro was willing to put his own dream on the back burner. Zoro loves his crew, yes, even Sanji, and he's willing to put his own interests aside if it means helping them fulfill their dreams. He never wants to experience what happened to Kuina ever again. That moment shaped him. Remember Water 7? When Zoro stoically declared it was unacceptable for Usopp to rejoin the crew without an apology? In chapter 438, titled Pride, he sternly explains how important it is for Luffy to maintain his dignity as captain. And not just take back a crewmate who won't apologize. Yet the same stoic, serious, logical guy, Zoro, seemed oddly relieved when Usopp finally apologized and was back on board. But wait, something is weird. Something is amiss. It's awfully quiet in here today. Where the heck is...
Subscribe to the channel and like the video, folks. Unbelievable. I was just out buying new socks and this guy starts a new video without me.
Excuse me?
No.
Well, whatever. Now, where was I? Alright. There are plenty more situations where Zoro just can't help but show off his soft side, but I won't list all of them. If you can name more, feel free to drop them in the comments. By the way, did you know when Zoro's birthday is? If you didn't, let me tell you. It's the 11th of November. This is significant for two reasons. First, since 1999, November 11th has been Pocky Day, named after the little chocolate sticks we all love. And since the SBS of Volume 15 came out in the year 2000, Zoro's birthday is officially November 11th. And now, would you look at that? Don't those Pocky sticks kinda look like little swords? Yeah, okay. More importantly, November 11th can also be interpreted as the number 4. 1, 1, 1, 1. That's 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. Get it? 11, 11? And if you got a bit of knowledge about Japanese numbers, then you also know that the number 4 can be read as yo or yon. And this is important, she. And she literally means death. So what do you think is more likely? That Oda gave Zoro his birthday because of little chocolate sticks? Or the latter? Well, I think it's the latter. And in my opinion, that's already a big indicator that Zoro is f***ed. Especially if you consider how much Oda and Japanese people in general love to use the number wordplays, known as Godowase. Being born on a day that can be interpreted as death in any way could mean serious trouble in a manga like One Piece. But let's move on. His sword Enma, as we all know, is named after King Enma, the Yama King, the Japanese ruler of the underworld who decides between life and death. The mythology around Enma includes him harvesting souls, right? So what if Zoro's sword Enma is literally harvesting his soul over time? We already saw him struggling with it at one point. Now it looks like he can kind of handle it, but what if later in the story, the Grim Reaper we saw in Wano comes back and finishes the job? Well, whether that happens or not, just having a sword called Enma is already another red flag that shouldn't be ignored. And there's more. In the crew, Zoro is the one who shed the most blood. Well, if you leave Sanji's nosebleed escapades aside, I guess. But Zoro always bleeds like crazy in battle, and throughout the story, I don't even know if there are any moments where he isn't bandaged, as if his body was made to bleed. But that's exactly where it gets interesting, because in Japanese culture, blood isn't just a sign of injury, it's a symbol, a warning. In old stories and superstitions, it's said when a powerful warrior bleeds too often and still lives, something is holding him back. A promise, a burden, or fate itself. And when the final drop falls, it isn't by chance, it's a judgment. In Japanese folklore, repeated blood loss, especially when it defies reason, is seen as a bad omen. It means the body is resisting death, but only for a while, because those who walk too often at the edge of death don't stay there forever. But we do know that a promise is holding Zoro back from dying. The promise he made to Kuina. That's why I said at the beginning, Zoro will most likely die the moment he achieves his goal, or shortly after at least. Zoro will fulfill the promise and then die in a moment of sacrifice, simply because he's the big softie we all know he is. At this point, if you still don't believe me, then I don't know how else I could convince you. Well, nah, just kidding. There's more, of course. Because there's actually even an SBS, specifically the SBS of Volume 91, where Oda depicts Zoro's future. And of course, he doesn't just draw possible future versions of how Zoro might look. No, as usual, Oda also answers the question in text. He says, if he lives on without any major problems, I think it would be something like this. And that's a bit sus, isn't it? I mean, if he lives on? Are you blatantly spoiling to us that Zoro is going to die before the end of the series? Oh! Yes! Oh! Nonetheless, I haven't even mentioned one of the most obvious things yet, and that's the way of the Bushido. Well, I kind of touched on it indirectly, but now I want to briefly point it out directly. As we all know, Zoro's character is heavily inspired by the way of the Bushido, the way of the warrior. It's an ancient honor code of the samurai, and one of its most important values is self-sacrifice. One very famous concept of Bushido is that a true warrior should always be ready to die an honorable death if it serves loyalty. And this fits Zoro's character 100%. As I already said, he proved it at Thriller Bark. He's ready to throw away everything for Luffy, and a death like that wouldn't just be honorable, it would be traumatic for the reader, and deeply fitting within Japanese cultural values. He would rather die than live in disgrace. Think back to Little Garden, he was even willing to cut off his own legs just to keep fighting. Zoro is the embodiment of Bushido, and a total nutcase if you ask me. But a cool one. And even if he keeps calling him Mr. Bushido. And since I mentioned the Reaper earlier, that's another red flag. I mean, it's already obvious, even in our Western culture, seeing the Reaper is never a good sign. But in Japanese traditions and customs as well, if you see a Shinigami, a god of death, that's a clear sign that someone is nearing the end of their life. Back in the day, if someone in Japan said they had seen a Shinigami, that was considered a very bad omen. And since Zoro is basically having a tea party with the good old Reaper here, we can assume that this is more than just a bad sign. Anyway, the thing that really strikes me is that Zoro, of all the Straw Hats, is perhaps the one with the least backstory so far. Heck, we even got more backstory for Jinbei, and he's the last one who joined the crew. Why is that? Remember when people freaked out because Oda casually dropped Zoro's family history in an SBS? Some fans were furious. But I don't think they understood why he did that. I mean, just think about it. Compared to the other Straw Hats, Zoro's kind of a spoiled brat when it comes to his past. Sure, his rival and best friend died, which is tragic. But overall, as far as we know, he had a chill life, hanging out in a peaceful village, learning sword arts, having a warm bed and food. Compare that to Sanji or Nami. I mean, come on! Even Usopp had it worse. His mom died right in front of him, and his dad dipped without a second thought. So why is that? I think Oda is saving something. I think he's gonna drop some real depressing shit on us about Zoro before the story ends. And what could be more depressing than losing a beloved crew member? I mean, people are always complaining about so-called fake-out deaths in One Piece. I'm telling you, they'll wish Zoro had one of those. In my opinion, Oda plans to use Zoro to showcase the ultimate sacrifice, the peak of loyalty, the tearjerker of the century. Robin screaming, "I want to live!" Ridiculous. Hero look blowing himself up? What a joke. Ace dying? Boring. Trust me, Zoro's death will hit like a truck. It'll strike you down so hard you won't be able to go to work the next day. You'll feel like someone you actually know just died. And rightfully so. Some people, myself included, have been reading this manga since it came out. And that's a long time.
been 84 years.
Of course it'll hurt. It will hurt every fiber of our bodies and souls, especially when it's someone as beloved as Zoro. Honestly, the fact that Oda didn't give Zoro an extremely dramatic backstory like the others, that might even be a gift. Because if he did, and Zoro still died, it would hurt even more. But it's going to hurt anyway. Well, unless you don't like him, I guess. But why do you think it is that Zoro's been getting colder lately, as people online say? Think about that panel in chapter 1124 when Luffy is grieving about Applegram's death on the giant ship, and Zoro calls him pathetic. Or Zoro snarling about cutting down the help of children.
Oh, oui, he's so cold.
Exactly. I feel like Oda is trying to make Zoro just a little more unlikable. So when the time comes, both he and we can let go more easily. Crazy idea? Maybe. But it's what I'd do if these were my characters. If I wrote a book and had to kill off someone important to me, I'd probably start giving them a few flaws too, just to make it easier to say goodbye. Anyway, there's one last thing I want to show you folks. Remember when I said to keep in mind that Zoro hasn't made promises lightly since Kuina died? Now look at this scene in chapter 653, when Shirahoshi asks Luffy to promise that he'll take her to a real forest on the surface. Anything strike you here? How about everyone making the pinky promise except Zoro? Why is Oda keeping Zoro out of this pinky promise? Is it just because Zoro is a grumpy old fart? Or is it because Zoro might not be around to fulfill that promise when the time comes? Think about it. As I said, Zoro doesn't make promises easily anymore. And Oda not including him in that scene, in my opinion, that's a huge death flag. And it spells nothing good for our beloved Mossad.
But what about Frankie?
Oh, good question. As you might have noticed, Frankie doesn't do the pinky promise either. But that, my friends, is a topic for another theory. And you might not like it either. Sorry. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you want more of this kind of content, make sure to subscribe and check out my channel for the wildest theories on YouTube. Cheers!
This is Tainted Marth. Marth has a lot of great One Piece theories over on his channel. One of my favorites is Emu is a clown, and you can get that link down below.